This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello and welcome to the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. I'm Kim Kiyosaki sitting in for Robert today. And we have a very, very important show today because it's getting close to that time of year. And there's a lot of funny stuff going on in the economy, and inflation is on a lot of people's mind. And of course, going with inflation, taxes are also on people's mind. So we're going to talk about the bad news and we're going to talk about the good news because there is both going on here in the world. And our very, very special guest today is Tom Wheelwright. He's a Rich Dad advisor, author of the book Tax-Free Wealth. And his new book is called Win-Win Wealth Strategy, 7 Investments the Government Will Pay You to Make. So welcome to our show, Tom.
It is always good to be with you, Kim. Love being here.
Thanks. Well, today's show is going to be a little bit different because we're really going to get into some of the practical things that are happening, and specifically around taxes, how that might affect you, the viewer, how that might affect your tax situation, and what you can do about it. And it's actually, I think, and Tom, you can talk to this. It's bigger than just taxes. It's really preparing for your financial life, and taxes are one piece of it. Unfortunately, they're a very big piece. And the way things are going are not necessarily in everybody's favor. So if we could start, Tom, with you giving from your perspective as a tax strategist, accountant, what you see is really, really happening in the economy. They keep talking about we're not in a recession. Sure seems like we're in a recession. They say the job markets are good, but I'll talk to a lot of people who have not worked for a long time and they're struggling day to day. So tell me from your perspective, what do you see going on in the U.S. and globally?
Yeah, it's actually a very interesting time. We have high inflation. We have, at the same time, we have high employment. We have a lot of people who've taken themselves out of the job market, which I think is part of why the numbers are like they are. You know, they say, well, there's such a low unemployment rate. Well, there's so many people that aren't even looking for a job. So they're not even included in those numbers. So I think,
why is that? Why are they not looking? How are they surviving?
You know, that's a really good question. There is a very high percentage of young people who are living at home with their parents. That's one way that they're surviving. There's still money left over. Remember, for 2 years during the pandemic, people didn't spend any money, and people were given a whole lot of money from the government. So between those, they were still getting paid, right? Or if they had unemployment benefits, they got high unemployment benefits. The unemployment benefits were the highest ever in history.
Wow.
So I think they had a lot of time to save money. I think they're still going through that. And now what we're seeing is that people are now going back into maxing out their credit cards. So they're going, oh, the economy's good. So when the economy's good, we can max out our credit cards. Of course, home prices are way up. And so that means that they can get more of a home equity loan. So I think what we're seeing is there's just been such an expansion of the money supply that people are tapping into that expansion of the money supply. On top of that, the stock market went up. So anybody who had money in the stock market, it's been artificially inflated over the last several years. You know, prices have gone way up. And so they feel like, wow, I have money, so I can spend money. And it's really, you know, I think the confidence is still pretty high. I think that's why people think there isn't a recession going on. But certainly all the indicators of a recession either going on or coming are pretty strong right now. And of course, the other part is that taxes are, they're such a major part of everything we do. And people are going to get, I think a lot of people are going to get hit hard come April. They think that they're going to get this big tax refund. I think a lot of people are going to owe taxes.
Interesting. So, you know what else I heard is a lot of people who bet on crypto and invested in crypto. Yeah. As the crypto prices were going up and up and up. Okay, let's say I'm, a 25-year-old and I bought some crypto and all of a sudden it went from, 10,000 to 50,000 to 60,000. Well, I'm rich. Right. I don't have to work. So a lot of people, I think, left the workforce because they felt that they had all this money in the bank and now have come to find out that's not so. So do you think people are going to start going back to work?
I think that's the multi-trillion dollar question, Kim, because if they don't, you're going to see inflation continue to go up, because what will happen is that you're going to have wage inflation, and wage inflation creates price inflation. And it's a nasty circle of things. So I don't see how they not go back to work, but, my kids are working, so I don't have kids at home. They are fully employed.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine. I mean, you and I, we grew up, with this work ethic, but work also gives us such a great confidence and so much responsibility, and the values associated with working and accomplishing and all of that. I think a lot of people are missing out on that. And I
think that shows up in your mental health levels. That there's a lot of depression going on. There's a lot of mental health, and there's a lot of drug abuse. A lot of not just drug use, but drug abuse, and that all is self-medicating, right? For those, because they're not getting it somewhere else. Well, the normal place to get it would be work, family, relationships. But people, if you're sitting at home playing video games, or, you're kind of withdrawn from the world and not productive, you don't feel worthwhile when you're not productive. So I agree with you. I think that not working is actually a very serious issue.
Good. Okay. So, we've talked before on the show, and we're going to get into this, Inflation Reduction Act here in just a moment. But we've talked a lot too about where this economy is going. Are we in this giant bubble? Are we in like the biggest bubble in history? And what happens if and when that bubble bursts? So from your point of view, do you think we are in a major bubble here financially?
Well, I think by definition, because money's no longer money, right? Now it's credit. As our friend Richard Duncan explains, it's now credit. So by definition, it's a bubble. To me, the question isn't whether this is the biggest bubble in history. The question is, can this bubble get bigger? And can it keep going? And I honestly, I don't know the answer to that question, Kim. I know that a lot of people, including Robert, think it's just gonna burst and everything's gonna come crashing down. But it's interesting. We've never had a world economy in the history of the world. We've never had a world economy that was based on credit. And so we're not based on gold. We're not based on crypto. We're not based on anything that we can put our hats on. We're just based on confidence. And so the question is, I think the difficulty is that if you're based on confidence, you have to keep that confidence going. So if you can't keep that confidence going, and the confidence crashes, then the whole thing comes tumbling down. And I think that's where it's really challenging in the economy right now, is because we don't have anything to fall back on that is really solid. Like, oh, well, I can fall back because I know that my dollars are limited by the amount of gold. I mean, that's something to fall back on. If I have 10 million, if we have 10 million foreclosures like we did in 2008, 9, and 10, well, all that's money coming out of the marketplace when those foreclosures happen. That's all money coming out of the marketplace, and you need money to continue going into the marketplace, which is why the government incentivizes debt so much. That's why debt's incentivized through taxes, because the government needs more debt because that inflates that balloon.
So in the past, we were a country that was built on production and producing things. Now we are a country that is just basically borrowers. It's a bunch of borrowers and it's debt. That's what our country is built on now.
Yeah, it's not just the country; it's the whole world, right? The whole world is based on credit. It's not based on anything tangible, and so that credit is good as long as there's supply behind it, and there's people want it and people can produce it. As long as that keeps going, it's fine. And
actually is a big issue today with the supply chain. I mean, we're experiencing it ourselves. We've had to, because we're in books and games, we're about paper, and paper shortages are all over the world. And we have, thank God for our team. They saw this coming and we were able to basically get stock for that'll take us to 2023. But a lot of people are not. The book industry is down 32% right now because of the shortage. So to your point, if there's shortage, that's going to build on that lack of confidence.
Well, and on top of that, that's a lot of inflationary pressure, right? I mean, inflation is pretty simple. It's just too much money chasing too few goods. So the Fed's working on not having too much money. That's the whole point of their interest rate increases, to reduce the money supply. But you also have the too few goods issue. And if you have this big supply chain interruption, and it continues to be interrupted, because I mean, a lot of people thought, including me, I thought, well, geez, by the end of 2022, surely all the interrupted supply chain from the pandemic will be back to normal, but it's not anywhere near back to normal. And that's that supply chains. You can see it on the grocery shelves, right? Or in the drugstore shelves, where half the shelves are empty right now. And it's, who knows what you're going to get when you go to the store. When you have that kind of supply chain interruption, then that means that you're going to continue to have price pressure pushing upward on that.
Right. And, I still don't understand this whole thing about, okay, if we raise interest rates, that's going to reduce inflation. But if you raise interest rates, the producers and the manufacturers they're going to be paying more for their supplies. So they're going to pass that on to consumers. So I really don't understand how that is a inflation reduction strategy at all. Never did. Okay. Inflation. All right. Inflation, the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, Tom, you are one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to taxes. You study the code. You are ahead of the game. This Inflation Reduction Act that the IRS and the government is putting into play, what the hell is it, and how does it impact you and me?
Well, first of all, there's nothing in there, not anything that reduces inflation. I always refer to it as the Inflation Enhancement Act, because there are some things that actually put upward pressures on prices, and significant upward pressures on prices. For example, we have it's good news, bad news, right? Bad news is we have $80 billion more going to the IRS over the next 10 years, which is basically double their budget, which will add a large number, not 87,000, like they said. I mean, it's 87,000 new employees, but that's not 87,000 new auditors. Let's be clear about that. So it's not as bad as that, but they will easily be doubling their audit force, and probably more than doubling their audit force. So that's the bad news. The good news is there's tax credits and tax benefits in this bill. But for example, talking about inflation, the day they announced that this new act would allow that $7,500 electric car credit to go towards Tesla, GM, et cetera, the car manufacturers all raised their price by, shockingly enough, between $7,000 and $8,000. So nobody's getting a reduction out of this. They had the $7,500 credit before. Now they say, well, now we're going to apply it to more people. So now what all the car manufacturers have done have raised the prices. So that's a little troubling when you see that immediate effect. I mean, literally, it was within days of the announcement.
Wow. So you've got billions going to boost IRS auditors.
Yes.
You've got some going to customer service.
Correct.
A little bit. Okay, so these IRS audits, so they're obviously going to have a whole lot more audits going on.
Correct.
Who are they going after?
All right, so that's something that most people are not understanding, because those who enacted this say, well, it's the rich that they're going to go after. Well, so here's the reality. The reality is 90% of audits are for people who make under 400,000. Actually, close to 90% are under 200,000. Okay. What Janet Yellen said, our beloved Treasury Secretary, she said they won't increase the proportion of audits on people who make under 400,000. All right. So let's do the math here. If the proportion right now is 90%, then the chances are that 90% of those new audits are going to be for people making under 400,000. And the question is, well, why? Well, because that's where all the money is. First of all, there's a lot more money under 400,000 than over 400,000. Second of all,
why is that? Why is that?
Well, it's because that's just, I mean, you're in the top 1%, right? If you're over 400,000. So most of the money in this country it's not, I mean, yeah, the billionaires, from a wealth standpoint, it's very highly skewed towards the wealthy, but from an income standpoint, it isn't. So you've got, and plus on top of that, they say the wealthy cheat. I have not experienced that. I've been doing this, 40 plus years, Kim. And that is not my experience. My experience is that the cheaters are in that $100,000 to $200,000 range, or $300,000 range. That's where most of the cheating is done. In fact, if you look back at the IRS statistics over the last 10 years, that's what the IRS statistics say is where most of the cheating is done. Because here's what happens. I mean, think about this. So you have a contractor come to your house and they say, well, I'll do this job for $120, but if you pay me cash, it's $100. Yeah. Well, what are they saying? They're just saying, well, I'm not going to report that cash on my taxes. Right. So I'm going to take a smaller amount. Otherwise, why wouldn't they rather have the 120? Because they don't want to deposit a check? No, because they don't want to report it on their taxes. So that's where the cheating goes on a regular basis. Are there wealthy people who cheat? Yeah, clearly there are wealthy people who cheat. But more often what happens is the wealthy understand how the tax laws work. They understand where the incentives are, and they have very sophisticated tax advisors like myself who help them find those incentives and take care of that, for them. So the average person doesn't have that. They don't have the education. And so they go, well, I don't want, the rich don't have to pay tax. I shouldn't have to pay tax. But the rich, they're not paying tax. It's not that they're cheating. It's that's how the tax law works.
They take advantage of the tax law.
Yeah, they're just saying, well, look, if the tax law is, as I said in Tax-Free Wealth, if the tax law is a series of incentives, right? And the rich just say, well, I'm just going to invest where those incentives are, then of course they're not going to pay tax. But the average person, they don't know that. And so therefore, what do they do? Well, if the rich don't have to pay tax, I don't want to have to pay tax, and they have to cheat, or they feel like they have to cheat. And so, the proportion of the audits, are they going to have more audits after rich people? Absolutely. There's one of the things they're working on right now is if you have total positive income on your tax return, that means take all the negative numbers off your tax return and only the positive numbers on. And if that's more than 10 million, you're likely to get audited. Okay. So that means you can have a loss from your real estate, but income from your business. And while they may offset for your tax computation purposes, from a audit standpoint, they're going to ignore the negative amount and look at just the positive amount and say, well, if you're over $10 million of positive numbers on your tax return, we're going to come after you.
That's crazy. What else? We just had a couple minutes before the break. What else is in this bill?
Well, so in addition, of course, there is some money for technology for the IRS in this bill, which they should probably spend $45 billion on technology and $5 billion on auditors, but it seems to be the opposite. And they have already hired customer service people, and that is in the bill, and they're desperately in need of customer service people and people to process tax returns. But on top of that, there are some very positives in this bill. There are tax credits. Again, the electric vehicle tax credits have been extended. The solar tax credits they've been extended and enhanced. And we'll have to talk about that because that's where actually they encourage inflation. There's going to be high labor costs for a lot of those solar initiatives. And there's one little bit that people should know about, and that's the business loss limitation rule, which we can talk about when we come back. But that business loss limitation rule is actually very significant. It was originally acted in 2017 under the Trump bill. It was delayed for several years, and this act basically makes it permanent.
Okay. Well, we'll be right back. When we come back, Tom, I want to talk. There's a few other items that are in this tax bill that I want to talk about, but then more importantly, I want to talk about what can the individual do to prepare for this, and where should they be focusing on? Where can they take advantage maybe of this tax bill, and the negative piece of it? How can they mitigate the negative side of it. So when we come back, more with Tom Wheelwright, more about the Inflation Enhancement Act, we'll be right back.
On the show, Robert stresses the importance of investing in assets that will outpace inflation and keep your wealth safe during recessions. But in 2022, that's easier said than done. Stocks and bonds often see negative returns when prices drastically rise, real estate has already taken a beating, and many commodities are in flux. There's not much left. Well, according to Bloomberg, there's one hard asset nearly everyone is overlooking: fine art. They say art can serve as an inflation hedge in almost any environment. Bank of America agrees. They declared that as inflation reaches a secular turning point, investors should buy real assets like art. Contemporary art appreciated by 17.5% annually the last time inflation was this high. That's significantly better than real estate and stocks during the same time. But none of this should surprise you. Why? Ultra-wealthy investors have preserved their wealth with art for hundreds of years, and now you can too with Masterworks. It's the new tech platform that lets you invest in shares of paintings by Banksy, Picasso, and Monet, and the results so far have been incredible. In the last 3 months alone, Masterworks has 4 paintings for 13, 17, 21, and 33% net returns to investors respectively. You don't need hundreds of millions to hedge your portfolio with art anymore. You just need a solid internet connection. To date, users have invested over $650 million with Masterworks, and here's the best part. You can skip their wait list and try Masterworks for free by going to masterworks.art/richdad. That's masterworks.art/richdad. See important disclosures at masterworks.io/CD.
It's never too early to play holiday music, and it's never too early to start thinking about gifts. Whether it's for a friend or the friends in your pants, you can make this a season to be jolly with Manscaped. Do your little drummer boy a favor and use the Lawnmower 4.0 to avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Then add in Manscaped's top-of-the-line shower products to have the people thinking, all I want for Christmas is you. Santa cares about his sack, and so should you. Look nice when you get naughty by going to manscaped.com and use code RICHDAD for free shipping and 20% off. This is Rob, engineer of the Rich Dad Radio Show. Last year I told you how I started using Manscaped to shave my Santa beard from down under. I also started using Manscaped's manly scent to add a little freshness to my jingle balls. I've been trimming my tree and using Manscaped's scented products to smell fresher than Christmas snow for over a year now. And I will never stop. Manscaping is an important part of my grooming routine and the part Mrs. Rob loves most. I don't even have to use mistletoe to get my special Christmas gift from her this year. All thanks to my Manscaped grooming routine. The Manscaped Platinum Package 4.0 is the one-stop shop for the man who deserves it all. It has everything needed to help you deck the halls from face to balls just in time for mistletoe season. The Platinum Package has each product from Manscaped's best-selling Performance Package plus Ultra Premium Body Wash, Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo plus Conditioner, and Ultra Premium Deodorant. It's the best way to smell fresh from your Santa hat to your candy cane. This Christmas package comes with the Lawnmower 4.0 body trimmer and the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer featuring proprietary advanced skin-safe technology to protect your delicate presence. Plus, both are waterproof so there's no issue clearing the snow out of your driveway. And there's also a 4000K LED on it so you can light the way like Rudolph. Now that you've groomed your candy cane, it's time to make sure you don't smell like a reindeer with the Platinum Package's shower products. All of Manscaped's shower gear is sulfate-free, vegan, and made to have your skin feeling hydrated and smelling fresh. But smelling good doesn't stop at the shower. The Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner can solve stank problems all day long. Once they touch your sack, you'll never go back. The Platinum Package 4.0 sitting under the tree is guaranteed to put anyone in the holiday spirit. And for the perfect stocking stuffer, add in the brand new Body Buffer, an incredible body scrubber that makes exfoliating easy and a lot cleaner than that old loofah. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code RICHDAD at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code RICHDAD. Manscaped, get your jingle balls ready for the holidays.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Hello, hi, this is Kim Kiyosaki with the Rich Dad Radio Show. I'm sitting in for Robert today. We're discussing a really important subject right now, and it's very much the practical, hands-on thing called taxes and inflation, and how the government is basically putting forth this bill, the Inflation Reduction Act. And as Tom has said before, it's actually opposite. And I like this too. Whatever the government says, whenever there's a new bill out, the clean energy bill, you'll know it's not about clean energy. So you know that Inflation Reduction Act is not about reducing inflation. Anytime they say this is what we're going to do, just know that they're doing the opposite. I think that's a key point. So our guest today is Tom Wheelwright, CPA tax strategist. He is the author of Tax-Free Wealth, and he's also the author of the new book, Win-Win Wealth Strategy, 7 Investments the Government Will Pay You to Make. So welcome back, Tom.
Thanks, Kim.
So we were talking about some of the other things that are in this bill and how they affect small business, how they affect the individual. So do you want to just touch on those? And then we're going to talk about what people can do to protect themselves and enhance themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. So one of the things that is very little known is this business loss limitation rule, which everybody who makes any significant amount of income should be paying attention to. And here's how the rule works. It used to be that if you had losses from businesses, including rental real estate, you could offset 100% of your other income. Not so anymore. The 2017 Act, this was the Trump tax bill, put this into place, but it was postponed all through the pandemic. And it isn't until 2022 that it comes into play. And what this new bill does is actually pushes it, lengthens the term of it. It goes until 2028 now. Now, here's what it means. If you have over $500,000 of wage income from interest, income from dividends, income from your retirement plans, if you have over $500,000 of that, you can only offset up to $500,000 of that type of income total with your losses from real estate, solar, other tax benefits that you would have. Otherwise, you can only offset $500,000 of losses. So if you're a doctor, for example, making $800,000 a year, and let's say your spouse decides to do real estate full time, so they're a real estate professional, and you have $2 million of losses during the year, you're still going to pay tax on $300,000 because you only get to offset $500,000 of that wage income.
So are they basically taking away the tax incentives?
No, what they're doing is they're, once again, they are going after the employees. So if you have business income, so let's take you and me, Kim, all of our income is business income. We don't have wage income. Right. So all of our income is business income. Well, our losses from our investing can 100% offset that business income because
not the personal income.
It's the individuals who earn their money as wage earners and those who get money as dividends, interest, and retirement income. All of those so you can only offset a limited amount of that type of income.
Wow. So again, the middle class gets screwed.
Once again, that's right. There's been an assault on employees. Remember, until 1944, employees didn't pay tax at all in the United States. There was no income tax on employees before 1944. It wasn't until after that. And even after that, for many years, the standard deduction and the dependent deductions, they were enough to offset the average person's income. It's only really been in the last 30, 40 years where it's all shifted away from focusing on basically taxing the rich to taxing the middle class. And that's where all the taxes are now. They're all on the middle class.
So the business loss limitation, does that include like 401ks?
It does.
Wow.
Yep. 401ks, pension plans. I mean, let's say you were a business owner and you socked away. So business owners, a lot of them like to sock away a lot of money into their pension plans the last, 10 years of being in business so that they pay less taxes then. But then what happens is, okay, well, if they didn't sock that away in a pension plan and instead had followed yours and Robert's advice, which was invest outside of the stock market, invest outside of a pension plan, IRA, 401k, then what happens is if they pull too much of that money out in 1 year, they can't offset that money at all. They're just going to pay tax on it.
Wow. On top of, as our friend Ted Seidel talks about in the book, Who Stole My Pension, not only are they getting taxed more, but now also their pension's being reduced on top of it because of bad management. Okay. All right. You talk about solar credits.
So this is where the Inflation Enhancement Act comes in. Enhancement part of the Inflation Act comes into play. So the solar tax benefits are amazing. And it's not just solar, by the way. It applies to hydrogen. There's actually nuclear tax benefits in here for. And
is that for the business or for the investor or both?
For solar, it is for the business or the homeowner. However, businesses are better. As always, businesses get better tax benefits than homeowners do. So here's the first thing. First thing is you put solar on your house or on your business, your real estate, you put it on your home, your personal real estate, or you put it on your investment real estate. You're going to get a credit now of 30% of the cost of that solar, which means you put $100,000, like I'm putting on my building right now in Tempe. I'm putting $100,000 of solar on. I will get a tax credit immediately of $30,000. For a homeowner, that's where it ends. Okay. For a business owner, it gets better because not only do you get the $30,000 credit, but you get to deduct 85%, or in $100,000, you get an $85,000 deduction. So that means that if you're in a 40% tax bracket, that's basically $34,000 on top of the $30,000. So think about it. You paid $100,000, you get $30,000 back as a credit, $34,000 back through deductions. So you're only paying roughly a third of the cost of that solar energy. And if you're in a place like Arizona, Texas, California, to not put solar is just it's just silly to not put it on your building because the government's paying for it. I've got a buddy in Texas, Kim, who put $185,000, is putting $185,000 solar panels on his business. And he's taking out a loan of $120,000. And because of that, he actually ends up net ahead. So he ends up with more money than he started with.
Yeah. By
putting solar on his house, and then the solar will pay for the loan. So he just gets the money right away. It's immediate. It's like immediately putting cash in your pocket.
All right. Well, we got to talk about that because we don't have solar on our building yet.
Yes, we do need to talk about that.
We're going to talk about that. Okay. One other thing. This is how they've been selling that. One of the ways they've been selling this bill is, everybody's going to get a $7,500 tax credit. Yay, everybody. Is it everybody?
Well, it's not everybody. By the way, can I just add one more thing on the solar?
Please.
So the whole idea behind it is that investors go out and put out big, massive solar projects, right? Not just on your home and on your business, but massive solar projects. There's a little known factoid in that bill, though. If you use less expensive labor, you only get a 6% credit. But if you use union labor rates, you get a 30% credit.
Whoa.
So 5 times the amount of credit if you use union labor rates than if you use market labor rates.
Oh, my goodness.
So when I talk about, you're putting upward pressure.
The unions have been pushing for this big time then.
Oh, for sure. Well, President Biden has said from day one, he's a union guy, and he's proven it in this bill, that this is a huge handout to union labor. It's a huge handout. Now, you don't have to be unions because that would be unconstitutional, but you do have to pay union rate. So some people are not unions and they'll still get the union rates. They'll be happy too. So that is the enhancement part. That's part of the enhancement of the Inflation Enhancement Act.
Got it. Okay, so tax credit, $7,500. Yay. Where's my check?
EV credits. EV credits. Okay, so here's the deal. First of all, the cars have to be made in North America. In 2022, just the production has to be finished in North America, which includes Canada and Mexico, right? Because we have a lot of Mexican car, manufacturing done with U.S. car manufacturers. But then more and more of the raw materials have to be made in the U.S. They have to be mined in the U.S., which I don't even know if we have them. So it's going to be, I think that. So I read the other day that very few cars next year, EV electric cars, will actually qualify for the credit under the rules that are in this bill next year. On top of that, you have to make less than $150,000 if you're an individual, or less than $300,000 if you're married. And if you make more than that, it's a drop off. You just don't get it at all. Okay, it's just gone. And only a car that costs less than $55,000 or a truck that costs less than $80,000 qualify for the credit. Now, interestingly enough, Ford, I believe it was, when they announced this law, they pushed their price up to, I think, $78,000 on one of their trucks. They go, oh, well, we just have to be under $80,000. We can charge as much as we want as long as it's under $80,000. And that's what they did. So that means that your Tesla Model S isn't going to qualify. Your Porsche isn't going to qualify for sure.
It makes no sense because they're pushing electric cars, but now they're penalizing you if you buy electric cars.
Exactly. They're pushing electric cars, but they only pushing them for people who don't make a lot of money. They're pushing electric cars, but they're only pushing electric cars if they're made in North America. So they are, it's limited. There's a lot of different policies going on here, and I think they tried to do too much, frankly, with this. I think they did expand it because it was that Tesla, GM, and I think Nissan did not qualify anymore because they already maxed out their credits. And so they expanded to everybody. So any car manufacturer can get it so long as they meet the other requirements of being finished in North America and that the income's right and the price is right.
Wow. Okay, so let's start with on the good news. What can the individual invest in before we get into how to protect themselves? What can they do with their money? What's the most beneficial, advantageous thing that they could be doing?
Well, whatever the government wants them to do. So really, there's 5 things that really the government wants them to do most. There's 2 others, but there's 5 primary things. So the first is business. Business has the best tax benefits. I actually gave an example in my new book that if you're starting a business in your house, the government will literally give you more tax benefits than the cost of starting the business. So the government will literally pay you to start a business,
even a part-time business,
especially a part-time business. They'll pay you right up front. Just reduce your withholding, reduce your estimated payments, and you get paid right up front. And you can actually have the money from the government to start your business. So that is a nod to the side hustle, if you will, the nod to the small business, because now you get to deduct your home office. Now you get to deduct the furniture in your home office. Now you get to deduct more of your car. So there are a lot of deductions, meals that you can deduct. There's travel that you can deduct. There's all sorts of deductions you don't get as an individual employee that you do get as a business owner. And so there's huge tax benefits in business. Of course, the government wants technology produced, so there are huge technology tax benefits. The government wants housing, so there's big benefits, as you know, you do a lot of housing investing, and for investing in housing or other investment real estate property. So huge investment, huge tax benefits there, mostly.
And for housing could be anything from a single family house to multi-family buildings.
Exactly. As long as you're renting it out, it could even be a VRBO or an Airbnb. So it doesn't have to be long-term rental. It could be, a short-term business rental. Okay. And then on top of that, then you add, of course, the government wants to produce food. So agriculture has they've always been really the number one preferred taxpayer. Very few farmers, ranchers pay tax. They just don't.
How would an individual invest in food?
Well, for example, you could invest in a ranch. You could invest for you, you could invest in a vineyard.
That'd be nice. I like
that. There you go.
You could actually invest in some beef and cows and bulls. Right. Yeah.
And that all qualifies. So you can absolutely invest in agriculture. It's a little harder. You have to do a little more research for it, and it's a little riskier. So you have to pay attention to that. But then, of course, energy is the big one right now. Curiously enough, they didn't do anything to dampen the incentives for oil and gas in this bill. The oil and gas incentives are just the same as they've been for many, many years, where you get to deduct basically 100% of the money that you put into the oil and gas drilling program. And on top of that, it doesn't matter if you're a passive investor. Unlike real estate, where if you're a passive investor, you're limited on how you can write off your deductions. In oil and gas, you're not limited. It's an unlimited amount, even if you're an employee. That's the one place. Now you're still limited on 500,000, but it is the one place where you don't have to be actively involved to get full tax benefits. Is oil and gas and solar tax credits. Those also you don't have to be involved at all. But really, the energy is the really big one right now. These are just things the government wants done. I mean, they're things that you and Robert have been talking about them for years and years and years. The idea of investing in energy, housing, business, those types of things that's what the government wants it done. So that's where they put the incentives. They know that if they put the incentives there, people will more likely take those projects on.
Last time I was in Germany years ago, there was a couple I was talking to, and I don't know if you can do that here, but they were putting just 3 windmills on their property and selling the energy back to the energy companies. And they had huge tax benefits because of that.
Yeah, exactly. So the point is that this
doesn't have to be big. Right.
And it doesn't have to be in the U.S. I mean, you don't have to be a U.S. taxpayer to get these benefits. I've actually looked at 15 different countries and done a lot of research on 15 different countries in Asia, in North America, in South America, in Europe, and and even in South Africa. And what I found is that the tax benefits are very similar. I mean, even Australia, the tax benefits are very similar from country to country. So the details. You gotta understand the details. That's why where your tax advisor comes into play. But understanding the concepts is something that is pretty much applicable throughout the world. Okay,
so where your tax advisor comes in, your tax expert comes in. So you're going to have more audits, right? You're going to have more taxes to pay and all of this. How does an individual protect themselves from that? if the IRS comes knocking and says, "I'm sorry, you just got audited," and you don't maybe have a tax strategist or a CPA,
you're in trouble. You really need to look now at preparing. The audits aren't going to start happening for another couple of years, because they need to hire all the auditors and then give them some training. So we're probably 2 years away from it. But remember, that gives you 2 years, and beginning with the 2022 tax return, that's going to be the first year that gets these heavy audits is 2022. Okay, so that 2022 tax return, you better have a better tax preparer, and you better make sure that you got a tax advisor, tax preparer, your CPA, that actually knows how to handle an audit. I've had a number of CPAs come to me since this bill was enacted and said, "I've never handled an audit. What do I do?" And I'm going, Well, figure it out. I mean, you got to be able to handle that audit. I've handled audits for 40 years. So it's not that hard, but it does take a skill set that is a pretty specialized skill set. So you better make sure that you're prepared for it.
But aren't a lot of CPAs scared to death or have put the fear of death into their clients about getting audited?
Oh, scared to death. Now, just because they've done that and you paid higher taxes because you've done that doesn't mean you're not going to be audited. So your chances of being audited, I think, are going to go way up, especially if you're a business owner or you're an investor. Your chances of being audited are going to go way up in the next few years. And so it's really right now would be the time to upgrade your tax advisor and your tax preparer.
And here's where I want to give you a plug, Tom. Your company is called Wealthability, correct?
Correct.
Let me say that again. Your company is called Wealthability. And I thought it was brilliant what you've done, because you yourself cannot handle thousands and thousands of clients, but you've put together a network of people that have been trained by you and your team to handle these types of situations. Personally speaking, we've been audited and you've handled our audits, and we've always come out way ahead because you actually end up educating the IRS auditor because you know more than they do. And that's what you want in a tax strategist and a tax accountant, because if they're telling you don't take the home deduction because you might get audited, then that's the wrong CPA, right?
Oh yeah. Anytime you're told, don't take this tax benefit because you may be audited, it is time to call us. By the way, Chapter 23 of Tax Free Wealth tells you how to find a good tax advisor, or you can just call Wealthability. We have about 65 CPA firms around the country that are now part of our network. And you're right. I mean, I train them every month. Our team is constantly working with them, and that's what you're going to need. You're going to need a better CPA. You're going to need better tax preparation. You're going to need to be ready for these audits, and then you need to have somebody on your side once the audit comes.
And let me ask you this, because most people think that their tax strategists and their tax expert and their CPA has to be in the city where they live. Is that true or not true? Because when somebody comes to Wealthability and says, here's my situation, here's where I'm located, is it based on location, or what's it? What are you going to?
Location is the last thing we look at, because we're on Zoom right now, right? I mean, we're on video. You're going to be on video. Who wants to spend time in the office with your CPA? I mean, seriously, we're not the most exciting people in the world. So instead, why not have somebody who's more suited to your situation? And what we're going to do is we're going to look at your situation. We're going to look at this, at the CPA, the tax advisor that fits your situation, and we're going to match you up. That way, we're really not going to focus on your location, because I actually think location these days is irrelevant.
Yeah. And so, for example, for me, I like real estate and business. So you're gonna pair me with somebody who's an expert in that field versus somebody who's an expert in the stock world or commodities world.
Right. Versus somebody who's just starting out, and they don't need the same level of expertise you need. So they don't want to pay as much as you would want to pay for your expertise. They want to pay less money. They don't need as high level of tax advice and high level quality of everything. So they want to, keep their expenses down. That's fine. We'll match you with somebody who can help you with that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Tom. Final words for our wonderful audience here.
Well, just remember that taxes are your single biggest expense, and there are more opportunities than you can shake a stick at in the tax law, and particularly this new. It is. I'd like to call it the Tax Reduction Act. There are so many opportunities to reduce your taxes in the Inflation Reduction Act, and I think that doing what the government wants done, it's safe. The IRS isn't going to come after you for doing it. And at the same time, you're going to get massive tax benefits, pay way little tax, and build a lot of wealth.
Great. So the key is to get smarter with your money and find smart tax advisors who read the tax code for entertainment, as Tom Wheelwright does.
Exactly.
Thank you, Tom. This has been great. Wealth of information. Really appreciate it. And everybody pay attention to what's happening, and get yourself in a position so that you're taking advantage of these tax incentives instead of being at the effect of the tax laws. So thank you, Tom. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.